All right, guys, so what I wanted to do today is kind of go over an alternator in a 1974 Super Bug. The reason I'm making this video is because there's not a whole lot of stuff out there as it is right now. I want to preface this by saying the chassis here is a 1974. The engine may not be, and I almost want to say it's not. It was bought just to fill the engine space for this project. Originally, it came with a generator, and since then I've replaced everything, but I do have the generator kind of show what it looked like. So this is the generator, and it goes in right on top of a stand. This is an alternator stand. So originally, if you do have a generator and you're switching to an alternator, you're gonna have to switch that stand as well. So the generator sits on the stand, and originally a couple things were in place here. We had our red cable here leading towards the regulator. We had our green field wire here also going up towards the regulator, and our brown ground also going towards the regulator. So with the generators, that obviously they need an external regulator to make sure that the voltage is appropriate. In the 1974, the voltage regulator can be found underneath the back seat. So let me just show you real quick where that is. Come around here. The original voltage regulator can be found in the same place I put the new one in. It's slightly larger, and I actually have the original voltage regulator here for the generator. This one here. And it was mounted just like so in that location. So first thing I did, I didn't pull the engine. I've seen some videos and some forums about people pulling the engine, and if you have more things to do, that might be a good idea. I did it a little bit more simply. I didn't take the rear hood off either. All I did was loosen the shroud. There's a bolt, pretty difficult to see, on this side, down low there, and another one on this side. This might be easier to see. Yeah, right here. You loosen those two, and then you loosen these around the tin, and the shroud can actually be loosened and slightly lifted up. After you pull off the belt for the pulley, and get the carburetor out of the way, and even the distributor cap, so you can reach all four of these bolts. It's pretty easy to lift off, and then the generator, or if you're doing an old alternator, comes all out as one piece. You have the tin here, there's a fan inside the fan shroud, and it all just can be kind of rotated up and pulled out. Once you're in that stage, it's pretty simple just to take the 36 millimeter rear nut off that holds the fan in place. Make sure you track all your shims correctly and make sure they go back where they need to be. But it's pretty easy, just quite a bit of force to get that 36 mil bolt off. And that would be coming off the back of this generator here. So you would have the tin mounted, and then your fan with the 36 mil nut on the back. So once you have that pulled out, you can swap and put the pulley on the new alternator. So I'll preface this by saying, get the internally regulated alternator. I feel like it would save a lot of time. I just called O'Reilly, said, hey, I need an alternator, and they gave me an externally regulated one. I put it all together and realized after the fact that it was externally regulated instead of returning it and going through the whole hassle of taking it in and out again. I just went and did the externally regulated alternator with the regulator later applied. So going over it a little bit more, I put everything back together, made sure all the shims were in proper order, and then I had to do some rewiring here. You could use some existing wiring, but at the very least, you're going to have to add an additional 2 wires. And so like I was saying earlier, here we had our D plus that runs to the battery through the regulator. And we have our field here, the green, and then our ground. To complete the external regulator for the alternator, we have 2 additional wires that will be used. The first one is this one here, and this will run to our new regulator, and the second one is actually connected to the ignition coil, and it's this black wire here, and it plugs into number 15 post down here on your ignition coil. I think that takes care of it. Make sure that when you do get your new wire, if you choose to use new or your old, that is a large enough gauge to support the current going through it. I dressed everything up and put it in this sheathing just so it made sense. I had to knock out some of the insulation in there to get it through. Let's go back around to the regulator area. So back in here, obviously I ran all my lines down through that rear panel, and they come out here, and it was just a mess. There's so much wire that just went to nowhere, but we're just going to talk about this regulator here for a moment. So you can get this externally regulated regulator on O'Reilly's for around $30 or so, and it's pretty simple. Colors go to colors. So your field is going to plug in right here on the green. Your blue line was to the dummy light, and you would have pulled that off of your old regulator, and the dummy light runs through this bit of channeling all the way up into your instrument cluster. The red came from the alternator there, that piece that we added on, and this black one came from the coil. I should also note that the brown that came off of the regulator is right here. This end is black, and it's still grounded relatively well right underneath the new regulator. So once you get those plugged in, you can start working with the higher power ends. So when we did our B plus from the alternator, that's this line here. The B plus you can run through your starter. I have it running straight to my battery. So the B plus runs through this bit of channeling here to the battery here. And that can be seen as this guy right here. Now, originally when you had your old regulator in here, you had the red and white wire coming from the instrument panel that went in here, and then you had a red and white wire coming from the battery that went here. Essentially, we just put these two together. Also, you may have a thin red wire connected to one of these that is, I believe, for defrost. It was severed on mine, so I can't say anything to that. But what we did here is we connected them. Here's the red and white wire coming from the instrument panel, and the red and white wire coming from the battery. I just did 2 spade connectors and then shrunk wrap it around. You could use a butt connector, whatever you choose, and just make sure those are secure as well. And that basically completes our circuit. So some things to note to make sure that your dummy light comes on, to make sure that you have a complete circuit there. Some funny things about my rig is whoever had it before got frustrated with the ignition, and they put in this push start over here, which nobody else should have. But I just plug it in here, turn it on, My generator light is really weak. It might be going out and I might need to replace that. But it doesn't really come on all that well. And then I just and then make sure it goes, your generator light goes off. And now we know it's charging. Another thing you can do here just to make sure that your alternator is working properly, and that's what I ended up having to do, is have a little multimeter here. Just set it to 20 volts because we're working with less than 20. And you can see that my battery is good and is charging. If you wanted to make sure that the alternator is working, you would turn your rig back off here. Get your initial battery reading. Go ahead, put it in on position. And you want to see it jump up. And you should see when you rev it, it goes up. And it's not going over 15 volts to make sure that our regulator is doing its job. So this is everything put together. If you disagree with anything I have, please let me know. I've just been doing my best to get some information out there. At least it's a decent guide. I'll try to put some pictures of all the stuff that I got with the prices in there as well, just so you can see it, and even the internally regulated alternator, and there's plenty of videos out there that show how to do that one. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys.